Good morning or good afternoon, based upon where you're located. This is Stuart Blumenthal. Looks like we got one or two people still signing in. It says waiting for their name, so we'll wait for them to join, and then we'll get started. Awesome. I think we've got everyone joined today. It looks like we got several clients and clients today. So just from an introduction point of view, I'm Stuart Blumenthal. I'm the Intacct Practice Director here at ETHOSystems. We have the wonderful honor of having Jeff and his team from Gcpay on to show and talk about the Sage Intacct integration, which we're really excited about. For those on Sage 300, that Gcpay was kind of like a staple in the industry, and we're really excited that the Sage Intacct product is out, and we want to make sure that our clients are able to see it and plan for that. Just a couple notes before I turn it over to Jeff and the team. First of all, this presentation is about 30 minutes. We leave a questions feature near the end, but feel free to use the questions feature throughout the presentation. If you have any questions, I'll make sure that they're answered behind the scenes. All the phone lines are muted. Just have to respect everyone's privacy and lack of kids running in the background. We talked about using the questions feature in there. One last thing before we turn it over. As you know, we are here at ETHOSystems. We've been doing a lot of trainings. We had our training last week on the new R3 features. We had our training a couple weeks ago on Avalara and stuff like that. So we've been doing a lot of training. In 2 weeks from today, we are going to be doing one on smart rules and events. Really cool, where you could take Sage Intacct to the next level and do some really cool automation within the product. And then we're going to take a couple weeks off finally, and then we'll come back and do one on tips and tricks for timesheets. So feel free to sign up for that. If you have any questions, again, use the questions feature. If you want a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, just put your email address in the questions feature, and I will send you the PowerPoint as well. So with that, I am going to turn this over to you, Jeff, to be the presenter. So make the presenter, and all you have to do is share your screen at this point here.
Got it. Thanks, Stuart. And can you see my screen, Stuart? Just want to confirm.
Yep, we can see it. Awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for joining. As Stuart mentioned, my name is Jeff. I'm an account executive here at Gcpay, and I appreciate your time. As Stuart mentioned, we're going to try and keep this to 30 minutes. So I'm going to keep it pretty high level, but just know that if you want a full demo for your team, just reach out to Stuart. He'll put you in touch with our team, and we can certainly schedule that for you and your company. I think it's probably helpful to just start off with a little bit about who we are and what we do. So I've got a couple of slides to go through and help you guys with that. And then we're going to jump right into a demo where I'll show you the entire application for payment process from a general contractor perspective and also from a subcontractor perspective. And I think that's really important for the conversation today, because I think you guys are going to really like what you see. But one of the most common questions we get is, what about our subs? And so I just like to say it right up front, subs actually really like Gcpay as well. You're going to see here as we go through the demo, it provides a lot of value to them. It's not just a tool that's helpful for your team that you're asking your subs to do to make your life easier. That does in fact happen, but your subcontractors are also going to see a lot of benefits. Keeps them more organized, keeps them more accurate, just saves them a lot of time in the process. So with that being said, what is Gcpay? Well, Gcpay is a cloud-based software application designed very specifically to help streamline subcontractor invoicing. Our founders were construction accountants by trade, and they started Gcpay back in 2003. Since then, we've been growing tremendously, and to date, we're now serving over 40,000 companies in all 50 states plus Canada. So some of the main reasons companies choose to use Gcpay, well, a big one is that we integrate with Sage. And so as Stuart mentioned, we already had integrations with Sage 300 and 100 for quite a while. But more recently, we have now built the integration with Sage Intacct. And so we're really excited about that. We have companies that were using Sage 300 moving over to Sage Intacct that want to continue using Gcpay. We have customers that are new to the Sage family, just jumping right in with Intacct, and they're loving Gcpay as well. So the main reasons they choose to take a look at Gcpay is the ability for Gcpay to, again, streamline their application for payment process. You guys know this already. Historically, it's time consuming, it's tedious, it's prone to error. You have really smart accounting folks who get bogged down with these things every single month, and they don't have time to focus on other priorities. With Gcpay, our customers are saving between 60 and 80% of the time they traditionally spend processing pay apps. And that's huge. Their teams can focus on other priorities. They can take on more projects without necessarily hiring additional staff. So on the call today, I'm going to show you how we can prevent subcontractor billing errors, things like overbilling and math mistakes. Gcpay takes that on. So your subs don't have to be math majors. You guys aren't spending a ton of time double checking and triple checking math. A big one here is the ability for Gcpay to prevent billings on unapproved change orders. I know that you guys are dealing with that today and the back and forth that ensues afterwards. I'll show you how Gcpay prevents that. We manage the lien waiver process. So we take your waivers. It doesn't matter what type of waiver they are, Gcpay digitizes those. And rather than your team hand keying those waivers every month or giving a template to your sub and hoping they do it correctly, we'll take that on. We can enforce compliance requirements. I'll show you how. We have some automatic notifications in place that are really helpful. We do have an electronic payment functionality. So if you're trying to get away from the paper checks and all the back and forth involved with that, really exciting new feature and functionality that we have. Just know it's completely optional. You don't have to pay your subs electronically in order to use Gcpay. You can continue using checks if you'd like. And then, a big one, as I mentioned, that integration with Sage just means that you're not duplicating entry. You don't have to hand key invoices back into Sage. Because of our integration and we sync with Sage every 30 minutes, we can pull information like commitments and approved change orders, and then we can push back that invoice information right back into Intacct. So one of the things I always encourage companies to do is your research. I'm going to provide a lot of good content here, but I would always encourage companies to do research on review sites like G2 and Capterra. You're going to find that time and time again, we get really high remarks and grades on not just our usability. We do try to make it very user-friendly for you and your subs. Not just our onboarding, we make it very smooth and fairly quick, but something we really pride ourselves on is customer support. We provide 24/7 bilingual customer support for you, your staff, and all of your subcontractors. So I think that's really important because, some people, they want to work late into the night, or a subcontractor might just have free time on the weekends to do their billings. And if they have questions, you're not fielding those phone calls. Our team is happy to take that on. We have a 5-minute time to resolution, just simply meaning we're not answering their phone call hours later. We're picking it up when they call, and we're getting those questions or issues resolved in 5 minutes or less. As I mentioned, subs love Gcpay too. We did a survey recently, got really high remarks, 4.3 out of 5 stars, 83% were very satisfied or satisfied. I think the real telling number here though, 74% of those subs have been in business for 10 plus years. So they're not new, they don't know any better. They've tried a lot of things out there, I'm sure, and if they're giving Gcpay those kind of remarks, I think it's safe to say it's a really valuable tool for them. And I won't read through all the quotes here, but of course, the things that you would be looking for if you're asking your subs to use a new tool. Ease of use, best site to use, saves them a tremendous amount of time, great customer service. But that's enough with the about Gcpay. Let's jump right into the demo. Okay, so I'm going to move something around on my screen here just so I can see a little bit better. All right. So what you see on my screen now is the Gcpay user interface. This is what you would see when you log in. It's what your subs are going to see when they log in. It is mobile friendly. So there's no additional mobile apps that need to be downloaded. It is browser based. So if you're in your office on your computer, of course it looks great. But if you're a project manager, you're walking the job site on your tablet, or a subcontractor maybe sitting in their truck on their phone, regardless, it's going to reformat itself to look great on that particular device. A really quick reference point today is right up here. Again, when we log in as the subcontractor, it's going to look nearly identical. Sage Intacct Construction is going to be the name of our GC. and Jackson Heating is going to be the name of our subcontractor. Of course, the first thing we want to do is start a new project, and we can do that in a couple of different ways. From the welcome screen under quick links, we could start a new project here. Most of our customers will work from the projects tab. And so this is going to list all of your projects where you can filter it alphabetically by project number. If you're in a meeting, there's a lot of other really relevant information. You can take a look at your total billed versus remaining balance, the budget for the project, the dollar and percent complete, retainage is withheld, and remaining balance. But back to my main point, you can also start a new project here. Either way, when you click on that Start a New Project button, because of our direct integration with Sage Intacct, a drop-down menu is going to appear, and you can pick and choose the projects that you want to pull into Gcpay. Now, for the purpose of the demo, I've already created a project. We're going to do the Gcpay headquarters, and I'll start right here in the project settings. So right here under general settings, you'll see this is the information that we would have pulled over from Sage. Again, preventing your team, or not necessarily preventing, but preventing your team from having the duplicate entry. So we're pulling this information over as it's set up in Sage. I did leave one line blank. I want you to see what it says, used on Gcpay generated lien waivers. This simply ties into what I meant, what I said before about the lien waivers. No longer is your team having to hand key them. We have over 70 different digital tags. And so during the onboarding process, we digitize your waivers and we tag them with those digital tags. And now when it's time to create the lien waiver, Gcpay will automatically populate the document and provide it to the subcontractor. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these settings in detail. Just know that if you did get started with Gcpay, you would have a dedicated onboarding specialist to help you with this. But we'll go through and talk about some of the more important settings. Settings can be configured at the company level or at the project level. So something like users. Maybe we know that I'm going to be the final approver on every single application for payment that's submitted. Well, we would set me up here in the company settings to be a default user, and therefore anytime a project's added, I'm going to be added in there as the final approver. But maybe we know that Sabrina, she's going to be the project manager. So we could add her in here to the project, and she'll have visibility into this project, but none of the others. Now, project level settings, we can change the permission roles for the individuals. We can change the review order. We can also adjust some advanced options. So maybe we know that I am going to be the final approver the majority of the time, but our CFO, Sam, anytime a pay app comes in over 10,000, he wants to be the final approver on that one. Well, we would just come in here, if Sam was the user, indicate that we want him to be the final approver if a pay app's over 10,000, and then they would automatically get routed to him for that final approval. Scrolling down here, a couple of other options that are worth noting. I do have electronic payments turned on. I'm just going to show you how that would work within Gcpay. Again, just know that it's an optional feature. You don't have to use it, but a lot of our subs, or a lot of our general contractors are adopting it now with their subcontractors. So you have some billing options. If you guys ask your subs to get their pay apps in by a certain date each month, you can indicate that. And again, it's a project level setting, so it doesn't have to be the same for every single project. Well, if you have this turned on, Gcpay is going to automatically send your subs a billing reminder 1 week in advance, letting them know to get that in. If you try to draw a hard line, you want to get those subs in the habit, well, you can close the month out after that billing due date. And so this is a great way to get them in the habit of getting those invoices on time, because if they don't, those invoices are going to be pushed into the next billing cycle. And so very quickly they know, hey, if we want to get paid, we better get them in on time. Stored materials, Gcpay can help you track the stored materials and the backup that you might need. Again, if it's a project level setting, if you don't want to allow your subs to bill for stored materials, you can turn it off, but I'll show you how this would work. Tiered subs, I know this is becoming a lot more common, where you're trying to track everybody who's on the job site. So if you know that there might be tiered subs or vendors on the job, you can leave this checked on, and then your subs will be asked if they have any subcontractors or vendors, and if they do, they'll be required to provide the financial information for those vendors, and Gcpay is going to actually send out a tiered waiver to those subs as well, so that you're having Gcpay track not just your subcontractor waivers, but tiered subcontractor waivers too. And that's a good segue to talk about lien waivers. So today I'm going to show you a couple of different scenarios, standard conditional, a conditional where notarization is required, and I'll also show you an unconditional waiver. This ties in really nicely to a relatively new feature we have called Waiver Exchange, which also ties into our electronic payment functionality. Here you'll see that tiered waiver that I talked about. Again, Gcpay will automatically send that out. Project compliance. So this is something that's worth talking about for Intacct customers. As it stands today, Sage Intacct does not have a native compliance tracking feature yet. I know that will come, and once it does, we will then pull from that, just like we do with Sage 300. We automatically pull compliance and enforce it. But in the meantime, our Sage customers will use Gcpay compliance section to add their different requirements for the project. Now, I mentioned earlier that Gcpay will automatically notify your subs that they have outstanding compliance coming due 30 days in advance, again on the day of expiration. If you want Gcpay to enforce those expiration dates, you can do that. You can check this box. This is going to prevent your subs from even being able to submit their pay app until they get that compliance up to date. If that sounds a little too strict, you want to see those pay app numbers, well, you can check this box, and that's going to prevent your team from fully approving that pay app until the compliance is up to date. All right, so last section I'll talk about required documents. This is great for any document that you might need or that an owner needs that you just don't want to have to go chase later on down the road. So you can add in any required documents. Today I'm going to require a wage and rental rates document, and I'm going to require it when the sub submits their schedule of values. But just know it would be just as easy to require it every time they submit their pay app. And again, that would be a requirement for submission. So they physically cannot submit their pay app unless they also include that wage and rental rates document. Okay, so those are some general settings. Now, we try to make the system very intuitive, and you'll see anytime something needs our attention, there'll be green buttons or red letters. So starting off right on the overview screen, you can see here, it's letting us know that we need to add a subcontractor to this project. And we can do that in one of two ways. Right from this quick link button, we can do it there. Also under project companies, we could add our subs here. So if we start typing in a sub's name, any subcontractor that's used Gcpay in the past will be in our database. You can just go ahead and add them. If they've never used Gcpay, very easy to invite them. Click on this button, put in a couple of form fields, name, email address, tax ID, that's how we actually track them, and that'll send them the invitation to join. But as I mentioned, Jackson Heating is going to be our sub, so we'll go ahead and add them in here. Now the next thing we want to do is pull over their commitment from Sage, and we'll do that by clicking on the integration button. And we're going to link their contract. Now this one is pretty easy. There's only a handful of commitments, but if you had a couple hundred commitments in here, you might not want to spend the time searching for it. So we've created a auto select button. So by clicking this, it's going to suggest which ones we think it is. And so I'm not going to pull over the PO. We'll just pull over this commitment. And now we're going to create their schedule values. This can be handled in one of two ways. If you already have that schedule values detailed out in Sage, we can pull that over as is, line item by line item. Alternatively, maybe you just have a lump sum amount. That's what I'm going to show you today. We can pull over that lump sum amount, send it to the sub, and request that they provide a detailed schedule of values that your team would then approve. So now I've done this. Jackson Heating at this point has received a notification letting them know that they need to detail out that schedule of values. Just know they cannot submit their first pay app until that schedule of values has been approved. So we'll log out. And now let's log in as our subcontractor. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, the subcontractor view is going to look nearly identical, but our reference point, we are logged in as Jackson Heating. So I talked a little bit earlier about the benefits to the subcontractors. Gcpay makes their life more organized and more efficient as well. They are also going to have this project screen where they can track all of their projects and the related information. They also have this really handy dashboard view. Now, general contractors have this as well, and I'll show you in just a moment. But think of this as the to-do list or a 30,000 foot view of the action items across the project. So maybe a sub says, you know, I've been meaning to get to compliance. Let me just come right here into the compliance section, click on the expired icon, and very quickly, they can take care of the compliance across all their projects that are in Gcpay. But right now we know that something has not yet been submitted. So we'll click on this not submitted icon in the submittal section. And here's our project, Gcpay HQ. So now the subcontractor is being prompted to add a bank account, because again, we indicated we're going to pay this sub via electronic payment. They need to choose which account they want to be paid to. And they could have multiple accounts or a single account, but they get to go ahead and choose that. Next, under the schedule value section, you can see we can go ahead and edit this. The system's telling us we've been provided $177,065. If it was a really basic schedule, well, they could just go ahead and start typing it out line item by line item. In most cases, we know it's going to be a lot more detailed than that. So we also give the subcontractors the ability to upload a spreadsheet. If it's their first time doing so, they'll have a template that allows them to easily map this information in. If they've done this before, they probably have that file ready to go, so they can just choose it and upload it. And now you'll see that the description has been populated, the values have all been populated, and the system is telling us it looks good. Now, what's nice about Gcpay, I talked earlier about the time savings involved with Gcpay doing the math for your subs and for you. Even if they fat finger a number and they're off by 1 penny, the system is going to let them know you need to correct this. It just physically won't let them submit this until they make that correction. So now looks good to go again. We can go ahead and save it. But you'll notice here, we can't yet submit it. And that's because, as I mentioned earlier, we're requiring that wage and rental rates document. So they have to upload that file in order to submit the schedule values. Okay, so now we can submit this. If we needed to provide any additional comments, we certainly can, but I think it's good to go. All right, so now the subcontractor can track this. They have a status section. They can see that it's been submitted. In the real world, first person on your team in the review order would get a notification to go ahead and take a look at that schedule values and approve it. Before I show you how we do that, I just want to bring your attention right up here to the compliance button. I mentioned that if it's in red, it needs our attention. So let's take a look. You can see right here, there's those documents that I had set up earlier. Now, if I had set up the compliance documents fully, there'd be expiration dates in here. And again, Gcpay will enforce those dates. So if it was October 1st, Gcpay is going to let them know 30 days in advance of expiration, and then again on the day of expiration. The subcontractors have a couple of different ways in which they can update this. They can certainly upload a document. That's probably the easiest. But we also provide a really handy cover sheet. And so just to show you what this looks like, there's instructions for the sub. They can email the document or fax it, but either way, as long as they use this cover sheet, Gcpay picks up on this QR code and automatically routes it right to the project and notifies whoever on your team is designated as the compliance officer to go ahead and review and verify that document. And so it's really helpful in some use cases. I've spoken to a subcontractor who said that they'll just reach out to their insurance carrier and say, cut me out. I don't need to be the middleman. Just use this cover sheet, and that COI is going to go right where it needs to go. All right, so let's log out of our subcontractor view. We'll log back in as our GC, and we'll go ahead and approve that schedule of values. I showed you guys the project view. As I mentioned earlier, you also have this dashboard view. And so in this case, we know that something was submitted. So go ahead and click on that. Here it is. Jackson Heating, schedule values. Let's review it. Here's what's nice. If I need to download that document, it's sitting there waiting for me. If I ever need it in the future, it's going to be right there. I know exactly where to go to get it. And I'm not spending a ton of time doing math now. I know that all these values add up to the correct amount, so I'm just looking for general accuracy. Like, did they give me enough line item detail? If the answer is no, they didn't, well, I can't blindly reject this. I do need to provide comments, and that serves two purposes. It's going to let the sub know what they need to correct. It's also going to be added into the audit trail so that this can be figured out later on down the road if somebody's questioning why it was rejected. But right now we know it's good to go, so I'll approve it. Okay, so if we take a look at this, you'll see that it's been approved. Jackson Heating could go ahead and submit their first pay app. But before I show you that, I want to bring your attention right here. The integration button is lit up in red. It needs our attention. This is saying that there's a discrepancy between what we see in Sage and what we have here in Gcpay. That discrepancy right now is a change order. So as I mentioned before, we sync with Sage every 30 minutes. If we waited another 29 minutes, this change order would automatically be added to the schedule of values. Sometimes you need to move faster than that. Well, you can come in here and you can also manually sync. And so with the click of a button now, change order 1's been added. And so that subcontractor can now bill for any one of these line items, including that change order. And again, what's nice there is that they can only bill for change order 1. You don't have to worry about the sub billing you for change order 2 or 3. They just simply and physically can't do that until it's been approved in Sage. All right, so we'll log in as Jackson Heating one last time, and we'll go ahead and submit our first pay app. Okay, so now the schedule values section has collapsed because it's been approved, and there's a nice green button letting us know that we can create our first application for payment. This is in fact AFP number 1. I have retainage set at standard 10%. Know that we support all different types of retainage, so pretty much anything you might need, we have in there. Okay, if we take a look at this line item detail, it's now hard-coded. Because it's been approved, the sub can't change the description, the value. It's going to show them all their previous billing amounts, which is super convenient, but that also cannot be changed. But they can go right down here and indicate what they want to bill for. So maybe they know that the exterior unit work was 10% complete. Gcpay is doing the math for them. Material. Well, they know they've done $5,000 worth of that material. The air handler material, that was billed for stored materials. They come down here to this change order and they say, no way, we needed $8,001. Again, system's doing the math in real time. Will not allow them to overbill you on any individual line item or contract total. They just physically can't submit this until they make a correction. Okay, that's good to go. Nice little summary. We can save it and submit it. But you'll notice here, can't submit just yet. Got to take care of a couple of items. And we'll go right down the list. Provide additional information about your contractors. So this is the sub being asked if they have any subs or vendors. If the answer is no this month, acknowledge it. If the answer is yes, come in here and add in that vendor information. So we'll just say that we got some extra material from Sal's Supply. Put in a description of our work, the contract value, how much is due this period. And there's also a joint check indicator box, simply indicating their request for a joint check. It does not physically create a joint check. Okay. Now, again, you guys will get that information, and Sal's Supply is going to be sent the tiered waiver. A checklist needs to be completed, completely optional. You don't have to have any. You could have 10 acknowledgments. A lot of our customers like this one. If you have any outstanding compliance, payment's going to be delayed. Should be no questions later on down the road. Stored material, we're going to go ahead and upload some backup. In this case, picture of those HVAC parts. And you'll get to review that when you review the pay app. Last but not least, lien waivers. So as I mentioned before, we digitize your conditionals, unconditionals, custom waivers, and we put in those digital tags. So things like names, amounts, addresses. You no longer have to worry about hand keying all that information. You don't have to worry about your subs doing it accurately or correctly. This is going to save everybody a ton of time. Now, if a sub wants to download it, physically sign it, and then upload it, they can. We also provide a convenient feature to electronically sign it. So just like DocuSign, you can change your signature, sign the document, and move along. What if notarization is required? Well, of course, if somebody has an in-house notary, they could download the document, do their thing, upload it. If they don't have a notary, maybe it's after hours or the notary's across town. We've partnered with notarize.com. So with the click of this button, brings up a screen sharing session, and they can have that document notarized in a matter of minutes. I'll go ahead and upload a document today. And last but not least, we have an unconditional. And you guys know this, a sub is typically not going to sign an unconditional until they've been paid, and that makes sense. They don't want to give up their lien rights. But we know, speaking with our customers, what happens. You pay them today, and now you might be chasing that unconditional for days or even weeks afterwards. And you hope that your team doesn't forget about it, falls through the cracks, and an owner asks for it later on down the road. So we've developed what we call Waiver Exchange, and it works with our electronic payment option. The sub is required to sign the unconditional when they submit their pay app. The first time they do so, a text box appears and says, you are signing this, but just know, when you do so, a big, huge watermark is going to be placed on the document. So the GC can see that they've signed it, but they don't get a free and clear version until they've been paid. Now, it works nicely with the electronic payment method because we can track those funds, and when we see that they've cleared, and typically that's 2 to 3 business days, we then strip that watermark, and you have that unconditional free and clear without even having to contact the sub, let alone go chase it down. And I'll show you that as we wrap up the demo. Okay, so we're just going to confirm as a subcontractor that this is the correct bank account we want to receive funds to. And we'll go ahead and submit our pay app. Now again, the sub can track this. They can see it's been submitted. First person on your team in the review order now gets a notification to go ahead and review that pay app. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, here it is, application for payment number 1. We can review it. If I need to take a look at any of that information, I can. Maybe this was a big, huge, long schedule of values. If we want to just clean it up a little bit, we can take a look at the current billing. Purple paperclip is going to indicate that stored material, so we can make sure that the proper backup is here. Again, what's nice is I'm not going to double check and triple check this math. I know it's good to go. So we'll review it. If it was not, if maybe they billed the wrong line item, I need to reject it back to the sub. I do need to provide the comments so that they know what they need to change. But today we know it's good to go. So I'll approve this. Okay, and just like that now, the pay app has been approved. At this point, you want to get that pay app information back into Sage. You'd come up here, click on the Sage Intacct button, pick and choose which pay apps you want to push over. So if it was just today's, or if you had a bunch of them, you pick and choose, click on this export button. That'll then push all that information back into Sage, create the invoice, and you can continue paying your subs the way you do today. If you want to use Gcpay's electronic payment functionality, you would click on the ACH button. Under the payable status, here's that pay app that we just approved. So we can go ahead and, again, pick one, pick all of them. It's up to you. We create the batch. And now if we go into the history, you're going to be able to track those funds. So right now you see it's pending. Again, it's going to typically take 2 to 3 business days, but for the purpose of the demo, we wave our magic wand and now it's been paid. So if you wanted to see that waiver, you could go ahead and click on it right on this line item, or you have a lien waiver section where you can track all of the waivers for the project. Either way, when we take a look at that unconditional, you can see here, free and clear, no watermark, signed unconditional. If you ever need it, you can grab it. It's waiting for you. Now, for time's sake, I'm not going to go into a couple of other things, but I'll mention them. So if you're interested, just reach out. We'll schedule a full demo, but lots of good reports that you can run that are helpful for your team. Something else that I know has become really helpful for our Sage Intacct customers is that we also have an owner billing functionality. And so again, I'm not going to go into the details here, but just know that if you wanted Gcpay to create an owner invoice, we've got that functionality, and it's really nice. You can map subcontractor costs to that owner schedule of values, automatically pull in those costs, mark them up, add in your own cost for work that you've performed, and then create that AIA style invoice for your owners as well. So with that, Stuart, I will turn it back over to, oh, you know what? Sorry, Stuart, I'm not going to turn it over just yet. Let me wrap up one more slide here I did want to incorporate. Just in case you're wondering what comes with Gcpay, I mentioned this a little bit before. You would have a dedicated onboarding specialist working with you, and then after that, a dedicated account manager. So we are going to train your entire team. We're going to train your subcontractors. We do have that direct integration with Sage, as I mentioned before. We're syncing every 30 minutes, so very solid. If your account manager is not available, or if it's after hours, We provide that 24/7 bilingual support for your team and for your subcontractors. You can have an unlimited number of users in GCpay, so there's no restrictions there. We will be happy to provide any additional training for your team. There's no additional cost for that. And another really common question is, well, do we have to wait for a new project in order to get started with GCpay? The answer is no. We have a lot of experience bringing customers on with their existing projects at any stage of the game. 20% complete, 50% complete, even 70% complete. That's fine. We can hit the ground running with those as well. Okay, so Stuart, turning it back over to you.
Thank you. One of the questions that came up was, what's the average implementation time from start to finish?
Yeah, great question. I would say average is probably about 4 weeks. There's just a handful of meetings. We're going to train your admins on the account, what they need to know. We're going to train your project staff, so project managers, project accountants. And then, of course, at the same time, we're going to be training the subcontractors. So I would say, on average, plan for about 4 weeks for onboarding, but just know this, our onboarding team is really, really flexible. It's not uncommon for new customers to say, hey, we have a project starting next week. And if they have the bandwidth to schedule a few meetings in a week, we'll do that with them, and we'll have their teams up and running in a week's time frame.
Awesome. I think that was any other. Just seeing if there's any other questions for anyone, but that was the one I could not answer through the chat. Nope, I think that is it. So I just want to welcome, thank you, Jeff and the GCpay team for putting this or helping us put this together. We're really excited to have this part of the Sage Intacct practice now and part of the product that's built in. I know that Sage Intacct is also excited about it as well. So I want to thank everyone for attending today. This meeting has been recorded, so we'll get it up on our YouTube channel. If there's any other trainings you want from us here at Ethos, please let us know. And really appreciate, again, the GCpay for doing this. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.